So the next section we're looking at, we talked about unintentional torts, right? We said that I'm not going to go over the questions from yesterday. We don't have time. First, we talked about unintentional torts were things that happened. You didn't plan it, right? Yeah. So you didn't sweep. You didn't shovel the sidewalk. You didn't plan someone for someone to slip, fall, crack their skull. You didn't plan. That wasn't the intent, right? Intentional torts are different, right? That is that it's desired to commit an act or a specific purpose, right? So the intentional torts are sometimes tied with criminal behavior, right? Or criminal activity. Because when you commit a crime, and we'll talk about when committing a crime, one of the things you need to have is the intent to commit the crime, right? Intentional torts is the intent to commit harm upon someone else, and you can be held negligent for that, right? So a lot of times you'll see people being charged with an assault or a crime, and then civilly they'll be sued because they're saying, not only did you commit the crime with intent, because you did so, you now have to help pay for, have some sort of reparations for what you've done, right? So they tend to be tied together. And you need to have intent. If I intend to injure you, that's one thing. So if I didn't shovel the front sidewalk of my house, I'm not intending to hurt somebody. However, if I go to a dog park and I put poison treats in a dog park, I'm intending to hurt dogs, right? I'm intending to cause damage. So just scrolling down here. Yes. That's not intentional. So intent means you have to have the forethought that I'm doing this to harm somebody, right? And we look at criminal law. Criminal law is you have to have the action of doing something and the intent to do the actual behavior. If it's not, then you get charged for unintentional tort, right? Like, so if you feed a dog a treat and the dog gets sick, oh my God, I didn't mean that, but you're still responsible. Because it's foreseeable to say that you shouldn't feed anything something if you don't know what its dietary requirements are. So I'm not going to read this part. You can read it on your own. Criminal intent towards the criminal act. So if you see here, there's a chart that talks about how certain things are both crimes and are also torts, right? So if one person hits another, it's an assault if it's a crime, but it's battery is also a tort, which means you get sued for assault, you may go to jail. The battery is you may have to pay for the person's medical procedures, right? Hold another against his will. It's forcible confinement if it's a crime. It's called false imprisonment if it's a tort. Breaking and enter into another person's house for the intent to steal. It's breaking and enter is a crime. Trespass to land is the tort. Taking another one's belonging. Theft is the crime. Conversion or trespass to goods is the tort. And again, homicide kills another person. Homicide is a crime. Wrongful death is a tort. Right? So you can see people bringing, especially with murder, you could say if you kill someone, that could bring a wrongful death as a way to recuperate some sort of I want to say financial or just a way to seek some sort of reparation for the behavior. And because civil law is less, not severe, but the burden of proof for civil law is less than criminal law, you start to see some people not being charged with a criminal offense, but getting charged with a civil offense because civil is not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's on a preponderance of evidence, which means it's more likely than not that it happened, right? So it's like a little bit above 50%, where beyond a reasonable doubt means you have to be pretty damn sure it happened and not have any doubt in your, don't have doubt in your head. Now you might have some small doubt, but a reasonable, but not a doubt that you really you don't know either way it's going. So it's a percentage, I would say like 75% and plus would be reasonable doubt, maybe 80. Okay. So the first one we're talking about is intention to interfere with a person. It's assault. So if you hit somebody, assault is a offensive conduct that causes a reasonable apprehension of imminent harm, right? So assault can happen in many different ways. It can be physical assault, right? You can hit somebody. You can threaten someone with assault, right? You're nervous about what's going to happen, but assault is uh, kind of an intentional tort, right? Now, when you talk about assault, there are different types of assault. There's also battery. Battery is the intentional, unauthorized physical contact that the victim considers harmful and offensive. So assault is a sort of threat. I'm going to come in your house, I'm going to mess you up. Battery is the actual physical contact you make, right? So that's why sometimes you hear the crime assault and battery, which means I am one. I'm going to harm you. So think about it like in school, someone says, I'm going to beat you after school, right? And they walk by you every day, and they walk by you throughout the entire school day, and they punch the wall beside you, or they look at you, or they yell at you, right? They even spit in front of you, right? They do crazy things in front of you. It's an assault because you think something's going to happen. It could happen. Oh my God, I'm going to be in danger. Battery is the actual physical contact, right? Uh, right? Now, battery has to be the intent to cause harm because battery does happen all the time, right? If you go someplace, does someone touch you sometimes? Yeah, if you get on a bus, maybe someone pushes past you, maybe somebody, grabs something you grab at the same time. That's technically a touching that you don't want. Battery is a criminal offense that you're intending to harm the person, intending to do something physically to the person. So sexual abuse is again the same thing. It's when you're being attacked and you're being so. A growing number of survivors of sexual abuse, spousal abuse, and incest are seeking compensation for their injuries in civil courts. While these people may seek financial compensation for their injury, they may also want to have their sons publicly exposed for wrongdoing. So sexual abuse is the when someone assaults you by teaching, touching a body part, or forcing sex upon you, anything of that nature, right? So you can sue someone for uh, sexual abuse, right? Medical battery is performing the wrong medical procedure or performing the procedure without the patient's consent. So which means if I don't get your consent, or if I say, hey, Thomas, I'm gonna fix your knee, and I take out a spleen instead, right? Uh, it could be, I give you nitrous oxide as a way to help you medicate when I'm gonna do a procedure, and I do something to you, right? Those are all examples of medical battery. False imprisonment is the detention of a person without consent or without legal authority, right? So you cannot just hold somebody, right? Now, some of you guys may be asking, wait a minute, what if I'm at the mall and someone says I've stolen something and the security guard holds me? They are holding you, but they have the legal authority because they think you committed a crime and they're waiting for the police to hold you. There is, I don't know if Canada has citizen's arrest, where citizens can, if they see you commit a crime, I can hold you for the police to arrive. But I just can't walk down the street and say, grab Helen, what are you doing? I'm taking you, let's go. Because that is false imprisonment, right? I cannot just hold you without consent and without legal authority. Another thing called malicious persecution, the wrongful persecution of a person without reasonable and probable cause. So you can't just come at me as a law enforcement or the police and come after me just because you think I committed a crime, right? So you might think I might have committed murder, but there's no evidence, which means the police can't show up at my workplace every day. They can't follow me home. They can't tell my coworkers that, hey, that guy's a murderer, right? That they can't do it without reasonable and probable cause. Unless I made a video saying I'm going to kill someone in my school, then they can warn the school. But they cannot just come after me because they think I've committed a crime over and over again. It's malicious persecution. I could sue the state, I could sue the government by saying, you're not allowed to do that. Nervous shock and mental suffering. Intentional interference, infliction of nervous shock and mental suffering, deliberate shocking of someone, causing the victim to suffer mental or physical harm. So that's a little hard to prove. It just basically means that I can't do something to you that's going to cause you mental health and harm, right? So if in class I decide to say, guys, I want everyone to look at the smart board, and I'm going to show you, because we're studying automobile insurance and automobile accidents, I'm going to show you videos of small children being crushed in cars for the next hour or so, right? It's going to mess with you. Like, what? You have to watch, because if you don't watch, I'm going to fail you the course. You have to watch this. Let's go, right? That would be mental health suffering, right? Or if I said, hey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have someone here. I'm going to come in. I'm going to tell them about, have someone come here and tell you about being sexually assaulted, and you have to listen, right? You don't have a choice, right? Those are things that someone could say, I'm shocking them. I can't do that, right? Hey, I'm going to show you a movie that's really offensive and violent because it's art, so you have to watch it. Right? Now, there's intentional interference with property. So that was with people, right? Those are all offensive, which means they're messing with the person, the individual, right? Someone's trying to hit me, take me prisoner, mess with my mental state. You can't do that. Interference with property is when you're trying to interfere with something that you own. So the first one is trespass to land. The unlawful interference with a person, property, or rights of another, right? So that could be anything would be trespass. One could be I go into your land and try to enter your home. Trespass could also be I take your phone and keep it away from you. Why is that? Why would that be trespass? Right, I'm trying to prevent you from using your property, right? Like, I'll give it back, but you can't have it now. Trespass to land is trying to enter someone's private property, right, without permission or consent. There's nuisance, right? Basically, loud noises, noxious fumes, dogs barking are just some of the annoyances that may prevent you from entering your property. Cause of action for nuisance may also arise of activity in your neighbor's property physically damages yours, or vibration from nearby construction damages your foundations of your house. In law, annoyances are called private nuisances and are a form of trespass, even though there's no actual one entering your property. So you might have neighbors playing music way too. I remember when I lived in a apartment downtown with I were married at the time, and we were next door to, the apartment building was basically just by Eden Center, and there are lots of kids from Ryerson who are getting apartments in the place. But the apartments were really high rent. So what people were doing was that students were bunking anywhere from 4 to 8 people in small apartments. And they were having parties, but playing music really loud. So we'd ask them, hey, it's 11, 12, I have to go to work, can you please turn it down? And they kept on doing it over and over again. One time they had a party where there was underwear in the hallway, someone had puked. We couldn't get any sleep. We called the security. They made fun of security. We got mad, went to the thing. They were put on probation. And a couple of times they've done it where my wife would walk over and knock on the door and say, you need to stop this right now, right? Like, I'm tired of this. That is private nuisance, right? Your party, your music is distracting. No, I can't. No, I think in apartment buildings, you can play music till about 11, and then after that it becomes disruptive, right? And communities, like people live in people's neighborhoods, they say, hey, I'm having a party, may run late tonight. I'm sorry if it makes any noise, to avoid that. But anything that messes with someone's ability to just enjoy their property by themselves could be anything. Sometimes, I'm walking through the neighborhood and I'm smelling weed. I'm like, come on, man. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning. Really? Right? That could be, well, weed is legal. It could be a nuisance because I'm saying I have kids in the neighborhood. I can't go outside and play without them asking, Daddy, why do I smell skunk? Well, right? That's an example of private nuisances. Public nuisance are unreasonable and substantial interference with interests that affects the community at large, such as public health and safety. That could be anything from pollution. It could be anything from noise and construction. So lots of people who live on Eglinton complain about the fact that Crosstown LRT being built is just a public nuisance. They can't take it anymore. It gets to be disruptive. Even if people are leaving trash all over the place, that's considered a public nuisance. I can't enjoy my property. Chattel is movable personal property, so that means things that you own. So again, like I said with the phone, if I take away someone's phone, Chattel is property that I own that can move. You're interfering with that. Someone takes my car without my permission, that's my chattel. You're trespassing to my chattel, right? Conversion is the unauthorized and substantial interference with of the property which deprives the owner of its use. So that's the same kind of thing, right? You take someone away from me and you convert, you do something so I can't use it. Okay, so important part here is the defenses of intentional interference, right? Which means, like anything else, you can defend yourself against intentional interference because you want to prove that, hey, there are defenses to this, right? So it says here, defenses of one in person are self-defense, defense with third party, defenses to interference with property, it's statutory authority, and both have consent and legal authority. So I'm just going to whip through those pretty quickly. Consent helps with a defense with the person. You cannot sue me for doing something to you if you consent to it, right? So this happens a lot in sexual abuse cases, right? Sexual assaults. They say, well, you consented to this behavior, so therefore I can't be charged with a crime, right? Now, whether consent happens, consent can be taken away. That's the issue that sometimes people say, like, yeah, I did consent in the beginning, but I said stop, consent's over, right? If I'm playing a sport, if I agree to go to a boxing match and I got hit in a boxing match, I can't sue the person for, well, you hit me. I'm like, well, you consented. So consent helps with both property and person, right? If I give you my car, I cannot get mad and say, well, you interfere with my property, right? Now, if I give you my car and say, please return it to me, and you say, well, I'm not giving it back, that's a different thing, right? If I give you my car for, hey, you can do this one little thing, that's one thing, that's one offense you could use. So consent, you say, give it someone to do it for a specific act. You can do this for this one thing. We can fight in boxing match. I consent if we're going to do, if you're on Dance with the Stars, I consent to you grabbing my body and throwing me in the air and doing things to me. Okay? Self-defense, the legal right to use reasonable force to protect oneself from injury from another. Now that's only for person. In Canada, you have no legal right to defend your property. In America, you do, right? Yeah. So the difference here is if Thomas, someone have a question?
No, I just wanted to point out that that's called castle doctrine, right?
Yes, yes, castle doctrine. So if Thomas, if I'm saying, I'm gonna kill you, Thomas, right? He has a right to defend himself. But if I say, Thomas, I'm gonna burn your house down, he cannot use reasonable force to stop me from doing that, right? Because we do not recognize the ability, in Canada, we do not recognize the ability to use self-defense for property. Americans, you can.
That's why they have guns.
Yeah, that's why if you're an American, someone enters your property, you can shoot them, right? Quinn was talking about calling it the castle doctrine, which is, I can defend my property because it's mine, and therefore, if you do something wrong, I can kill you, okay? Canada is also very interesting, and we'll talk about this when we talk about criminal law. I remember the idea that reasonable force. So if I say, I'm gonna kill you, Helen, and I grab Helen, and Helen throws me and pushes me aside and runs away, that's reasonable. If I say, I'm gonna kill you, Helen, she throws me, I fall to the ground, and Helen walks over me and says, time for you to die, and then stomps on my head, that's not reasonable, right? Because she used enough force to avoid me from being hurt. Her next duty in the law is to flee, right? In fact, your first duty in self-defense is to always flee, right? So if I say, I'm gonna kill you, Helen, she should run first, right? If I go, I wanna get out of this chair, I'm gonna kill you, I'm not a threat. But if I go up to Helen right now, and I stand in her way and say, I'm gonna kill you, then I become a threat and you can defend yourself with the reasonable amount of force to survive. You can't go over. I can't pull out a knife, she disarms me, throws me to the ground, she takes the knife and she starts stabbing me in my chest. That's over the line, okay? And remember, in Canada, people, yes, property, no. In America, people and property. There's also the defense of the third party, the legal right to use reasonable force to protect someone from injury. So if I say, I'm going to kill you, Helen, but then as I go to attack her, Regina jumps me and beats me up, she's okay. Because she could say, no, I had to protect Helen because I was going to kill her, right? So you can defend someone else, but again, reasonable amount of force, right? The word is always used reasonable amount of force. You cannot go overboard, right? In Regina's defense of Helen, Regina can't then snap my arm and then cut off my legs, right? That's not reasonable, right? She can restrain me, right? She can match my force, but she can't exceed the force I use, right? So if I pull out a knife and go, I'm going to kill you, Helen, Regina can't pull out a machine gun and then fully full of leg, go, ah, then empty the clip, then put a new clip and go, ah, like, whoa. Because Regina could have said, I have a gun, you have a knife. Now, if you go anywhere close to her, I will shoot you, right? That's reasonable, right? But you can't say, I can't say, I'm going to kill you, Helen, with my fist, and Regina pulls out a rocket launcher and blows me up, right? That's way too much. It's like, that's not a reasonable response to defending somebody. So property is also consent. Remember, if you can lend your property to someone for a reason. So if I say, can I borrow your phone? Yeah, you want to make a call? Here you go. Make that one call. It doesn't mean, here, take my phone. Okay, hey, I got a new phone now, right? That's not consent, because consent's always limited. Consent is always for a specific purpose. Right, so, I mean, think about like if you're even with times when someone say, can I borrow your ball to play basketball? Yeah. Can I have my ball? No. Well, now you've taken something, right? I said you're gonna play basketball with this ball. I want it back. Legal authority, right? Some people have the legal authority to trespass onto your property. For instance, police officers can legally search your property if they have a search warrant. Other public officials also may enter your property for a range of activities to determine the value of the land for tax purposes or checking, ensure that your house is within building codes. So police, if they want to enter your property, they need a warrant, right? In fact, little legal trick here, guys. If a police officer says, can I come into your house? You should say, no. Or say, do you have a warrant? No, well, you can't come in, because once an officer comes into your home, anything they observe, they can charge you with, right? So if you come into your home and I see that there's a kilo of cocaine, I'm charging you with that. I didn't need a warrant because you invited me into your house. So I remember a lot told me that goes, hey, police officer ever comes to your home, wants to speak to you, say, I'll step outside. Because anything they see in your house, they can charge you with, because now you've let them enter your home, right? If someone wants to check your water or gas, you got to let them do that, right? Okay. Having said that, if someone says they want to check your furnace because they want to give you a deal on a new furnace, you don't have to, right? Because that is something else. That's someone trying to sell you a furnace. But a water main or thing, you have to consent to that, right? But usually they'll have an order, or they'll have something to show you that they have the right to be there. But legal authority is very, very limited, right? You can't just let someone into your home, and people just get into your home without your permission. And the last one is statutory authority, which is the legislation that grants someone the authority to perform an act that could create a nuisance, which means, hey, I have to, so at my house, there's a water main in my driveway, and they said, we have to change that out. It's gonna cause lots of noise, so I have to sort of put up with it. Or, hey, we have to tear up all the water main lines here onto the street. Too bad you gotta deal with it, right? It's statutory authority. Okay, sorry guys, I'm moving to it. And the last person I want to talk about is two things that people talk about all the time: libel and slander. Does everyone know what libel or slander is?
Okay, so slander is saying something about something that is false, that is harmful in some way.
Right.
And liable is very similar to slander, but it's less like it's something that can be harmful to some person, but it isn't doesn't necessarily have to be false or no.
Okay, so you're close. So libel and slander are the same thing, except slander is when you say something, libel is when you write it, right? So if I
Mhm.
said, uh, Hesam is a child murderer, right? That's slander, right? If I write in a paper, Hesam the child murderer by Walla Dowdy, I'm trying to start, that's libel, right? So anything that causes a state, defaming a state, so it could be a statement or a gesture. If I say something else, it could be a gesture. I could say anything about. I could say, Hesam is. I'm twisting my hand like this, and you can't see me. That's still slanderous, right? So you can't say it. So libel is written or recorded statements. Libel is verbal, right? So newspapers get sued for libel. Um, Someone writing a speech saying in public will be sued for slander. So, and it's all about defamation of character. That if you say these things, this may affect me as a person, and it may affect my standing. So, if I said Hesam is, sorry, this is. If I said, well, it's not. Okay, let's pick on Steve. If I Steve is in the child pornography, that's slanderous, right? Like, whoa, that would affect his career, affect his standing, affect his safety. I can't say that, right? But there are defenses to people who use defamation. So the big four are truth, fair comment, qualified privilege, and his absolute privilege. The truth is, if what I say is true, it's not slanderous, right? Right? So if I say Donald Trump is a thief, he could say, I'm suing you for slander. Can you? If I can prove it, I can say whatever I want, right? Okay. And you know, so some people say, I'm going to sue you, I'm going to sue you, I'm going to sue you. Okay. Now I'm going to prove to you why I think, if I say Donald Trump is broke or owes money, yeah, I'm suing. Go ahead, sue me for slander. Prove me I'm wrong, right? So if I have the truth, I can say this, right? Even if the statements are damaging, if they're true, that could be the defense, right? Fair comment. Defense of the comments were made by honest without malice. So if I am making a fair comment, which means that if I say something about somebody, but I'm not doing it because I'm being malicious, and they are, and it was made by honest comments, that would be fair comment. So if I talk about why I don't like a television show or I don't like a piece of art, right? And I'm not doing it as a mouth, I'm saying these are the things I do not like about it, right? It's called fair comment. I'm not being a jerk. I'm not trying to destroy someone. I go, I don't like the new Star Trek because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? And these are all things it's called fair comment. So I can criticize something. People can make comments about something. Um, if the intent is I'm giving you my honest opinion and I'm not trying to be malice, right? An improper or other ulterior motive for publishing defamatory statements, right? So I don't say something that I know that would look bad on you, right? So again, I want to use my favorite orange president. Um, when he says something like Hillary should be locked up, I would say that's not fair comment because it's malice, right? Why should she be locked up? Well, I think she's up for an email. Like, no, right? Or when he says, or when someone implies that, well, I think those people over there might, uh, be terrorists. Like, well, do you understand if you call me a terrorist, that's how dangerous that is for me? Like, I could be in trouble. It's not fair comment. It is malicious. Sometimes people say things about someone in a way to get them in trouble or get them killed, right? Um, the In the States, the governor of Michigan was almost kidnapped by a terrorist group uh, and would have been killed. And the governor of Michigan says, you know who's problem for this? It's Trump's fault because he's encouraged those people. Now he could say, I'm going to sue her. She could say, no, it's fair comment because you said stuff, you've published and said, liberate Michigan, You know there are people out there who are not stable, and yet you suggested that people liberate the state when I was acting with my legal authority to enforce masks in the state of Michigan, right? So that's an example of fair comment. I have the right to say, call you that because you've done this stuff and I can prove it. I can show that I'm not being malice. I'm trying to establish that my honest opinion is that you almost got me killed. Okay, so you have absolute privileges, which is the protection from liability from statements made in parliament, such as legislature or a courtroom or military hearing or before a tribunal. So you notice how politicians will say the most horrible things to people while in government, and then when they leave, they don't say it again? Because in parliament, you can say whatever you want. Actually, Thomas is a horrible human being who punches babies in the face in parliament. Thomas will say, well, say it again to me, Walt. Say it to me again outside of parliament. I'll say, no, I'm not, because I don't have protection. That's why politicians can say offensive things in parliament, and maybe they're asked to apologize because maybe parliament says we don't like their tone there, but they're not held liable for it. You can't be sued for it. You can't be held, it's not slanderous, what you say in parliament. That's why some politicians will say horrible things in government parliament, but they step outside of parliament, they say nothing. Okay. And the last one is, qualified privilege, protection from liability for statements made by in certain situations as long as they were made without malice, right? So people have made statements in certain situations are protected as long as their statements are made without malice. And protection, called qualified privilege, applies to someone who has the duty to make a statement or an interest to protect. And receiving a statement has a duty of interest in receiving it. For example, employers and teachers often are asked to write letters of reference for former employees and students. Qualified privilege makes it so for them to be asked and forthright about their assessment of the individual without concern they'll be sued, right? So I know everyone's heard the thing that, so if you ask me for a reference, someone asks me, I can say, no, you're a horrible student and you're lazy. They can't sue me saying you're being slight. No, no, no. You asked me to give you a reference about your abilities. I'm not being malicious. I'm telling the person the truth, right? Someone have a point they want to make?
I just like to point out that yes, you can say that, but oftentimes you're not really supposed to say that due to external factors that are beyond that. So oftentimes what people do is they sort of say the bare minimum which is supposed to indicate that like this person has a great understanding of the language, but like doesn't say anything about them showing up to class or doing good in work, which is supposed to heavily imply that they're not good at what they're doing.
All right, so Quinn was talking about that in those situations, people won't tell everything. They'll say, are they a hard worker? Well, they've been known to show up at school in time, right? So I don't say yes or no. I just dance around the issue, right? However, I can't get sued because you gave me a bad reference. No, I gave you a reference based upon my experiences, right? So I know when I'm asked to give a reference, I'll either won't give one, or if I do, I'll say, be honest. Do you honestly think this person can do it? No. Right? It's qualified. It's okay. You're not going to get in any trouble. Okay. Oh, that was a lot. All right. So those are intentional torts, guys. So basically, they're tied to law. We know there's ones that are physical. There's one to deal with you as a person, one to deal with your property, and one to deal with your reputation, right? All of them have defenses based upon basically the intent. And if you look at a key thing is the intent of the person saying it. If my intent in my defense is not to cause you damage or harm, then I can pretty much ward off any type of civil persecution or civil judgment, right? I can show you that I didn't mean to do it, right? It was qualified, it was rational, it was reasonable, it's fine. Now remember, civil law is less than criminal law because civil law means money, and that's how you get reparation for civil law is about money and cash. It's not about death, right? Not about your life. So people are willing to let go money a little easier than let go your life, or When it becomes your life or livelihood or your freedom, the bar is much higher in what you need to prove. Okay, I'm going to stop this here.